Today I'm going to show you how to do a magic circle, or known as a magic ring, and I'm going to give you a few pointers for how to do this with plush, like blanket style yarn, to where the yarn is not going to snap on you. Now a magic circle, or again magic ring, it goes by both names, but I'm going to just call it magic circle from now on. A magic circle is one of the hardest things to do in crochet, in my opinion, so this is more than likely going to take practice, and my way of explaining it may not click to you, so you may want to check out some other people's tutorials as well. I will not be offended if you don't understand the way I am teaching it. That is perfectly fine. But the way I am teaching it is a way I haven't seen anybody else explain it, and it is a way that I wish was explained to me when I first started to do crochet amigurumi, or known as plushies, and I needed to do magic circles all the time. I was only able to do them like maybe a fourth of the time I was trying to do them. It was really frustrating. I would keep trying to do them and something was going wrong, and I had no idea what was going wrong. So I am going to tell you what I was doing wrong the whole time, and hopefully if you're doing the same thing, it will teach you to not make the same mistake I did for like probably a year or two. So anyways, with that, we're just going to get started. You'll obviously need your crochet hook and your yarn. And for this tutorial, I am going to do 6 single crochets in the magic circle, but whatever pattern you're working on, it may say 6, it may say 5, it may say 8, it may say 12, however many stitches you actually need to do into the magic circle is going to depend on the pattern. But your typical pattern, and most commonly you're going to see, start with 6 single crochets. So that's what I'm doing today for this example. For the purposes of this video, and so we're all on the same page, this end of the yarn here I'm going to refer to as the tail, and this end that is attached to my ball of yarn over here is called the working end. That way you know which end of the yarn I am talking about as we are doing this. So my way of doing a magic circle is to first take this tail, which I am right-handed, by the way. So this is my right hand right here, and this is my left hand. So I take this tail end of the yarn and place it over my pointer finger and my middle finger on my left hand, with the tail facing toward me. And then I will hold down with my thumb up against my middle finger here to keep that in place. And you do want to leave a little bit of extra down here, so I'm going to leave a little bit like that. And again, tail end of the yarn over the pointer finger and the middle finger with some extra dangling down, and the tail is pointed towards me. Then I'm placing my thumb on top of this middle finger on top of the yarn in order to hold it in place. Now I'm grabbing this working end of the yarn and I'm wrapping it around the back of my fingers. So first around the pointer finger and then around the middle finger. And this should be closer to my fingertips, while the tail end is closer to my knuckles. And then I'm wrapping this working end in an X shape over top of that tail end. So again, we're making an X shape right here, and I'll show you that again. So this working end is going over top of the tail and making an X. And then I'm leaving this working end back here, and I'm going to place it on top of my pinky finger, and I'm going to hold my ring finger here and kind of pinch this working end together. So pinching this working end between my pinky finger and my ring finger. So I'm holding the yarn exclusively in my left hand now. I'm not doing anything with my right hand. But now I will use my right hand to pick up the crochet hook, and I'm going to flip my left hand over. So now the palm of my hand is going to face down at the table, and my knuckles will be facing up. And you should have 2 parallel lines here with the yarn on the back side. So you're gonna go with your crochet hook under the first loop, which when I say first loop, I'm referring to the one that's closest to the fingertips. So you're gonna go under this first loop with the crochet hook, and you're going to use the hook to grab that second loop, which is closest to my knuckles. Grab that second loop and pull it under the first loop. Then you're going to twist. So you're going to twist like that. So I'll show you that again really quick so you can kind of get that down. And if you need to repeat any parts of this video, of course, feel free to do that. So I'm going under the first loop, again, the one closest to my fingertips, with the crochet hook, and then I'm grabbing that second loop with my hook and bringing it under that first loop. And then once I'm under that loop, I'm going to twist. So it should look something like that. And then once I have that twist, I'm kind of pushing it down on my hook a little. And then I'm going to grab the working end, which is in between my ring finger and my pinky finger. I'm grabbing that working end with my hook, and I'm going to yarn over. So that refers to just taking the working end around the back of the hook. So bringing the working end toward myself. So that's yarning over. And then that creates 2 loops on your hook. You're going to bring this front loop, so the one closest to the hook, underneath the one in the back. So this one is going to go under this one. So I'm just rotating my hook to pull it through and under. And this creates the magic circle. So now I'm going to remove my fingers, and then we have this circle where we are going to place these 6 single crochets. Now the spot that I always messed up whenever I was trying to do magic circles for the first time and I didn't know what I was doing wrong, every time I messed up, what I would do is I would take this tail end of the yarn and I would move it out of the way. I thought it was in my way. Turns out, after many years of mistakes, turns out that that was my mistake. You want to keep this tail right where it is, and you want to work your stitches into this circle with this tail how it is, and you're going to see why in a moment. So I'm now going to work my 6 single crochet into this magic circle. In case you're not familiar with single crochets, I'll show you one time. You're going to insert into the circle, which is here. So again, this is the circle. You have the tail end here on the top. You're going to go under here where the tail is, and under this other part of the circle as well. You're going to go under, and you're going to yarn over. So again, that's just wrapping the working end of the yarn around the back of the hook. And then you're going to pull up a loop. So that refers to just pulling this loop through the circle. So pulling that through the circle, and then there'll be 2 loops on your hook. In order to finish out the single crochet, you're going to yarn over again, so around the back of the hook and towards yourself, and then you're going to pull this loop under these first 2 loops. So you can do one at a time if that's easier. I pulled it under the first one, and now I'm pulling it under the second one. So that creates 1 single crochet. I'm doing 6 in this circle, so right now I'm going to do 2 more so I can show you what the halfway point looks like. So I'm going to just do 2 more really quick here, and again, if you need a repeat of how to actually do the single crochets, you can rewind in this video and see what I just showed you. But I just completed 2 more. So I have 1, 2, 3, which if you're newer to crochet, it might be hard to count those stitches and recognize where each one is. So you may want to keep like tally marks or something after you finish each stitch. That way you know how many you've done and you can keep track of it. But for me, I'm able to count it since I've been doing this for a long time. So there's 1, 2, 3 single crochets I just made. And now what I'm going to do, even though this is the halfway point, since this is a chunkier, softer yarn, sometimes it's more fragile and it can break easy, and then you have to redo the whole circle if it breaks on you. And obviously you don't want that to happen. So the first tip to just make sure that doesn't happen is to be doing your stitches pretty loose in this circle. Like you don't want to be tightening them super tight because it can cause issues when you're trying to tighten this circle. Then the other tip is to do about half of your stitches. So that's what I just did, the 3 single crochets. And now I'm going to go ahead and tighten the circle a little bit of the way now, and then I will finish tightening it once I've done the last 3 stitches. So in order to tighten a magic circle, you take this tail, which if you're able to tell, this tail was worked under those stitches we just made. That's why you don't want to move the tail out of the way. The tail needs to be under the stitches you're making. That way we can do this tightening and make this loop small. I'm going to go ahead and tighten it, which I'm just holding onto my stitches here with my right hand, and then I'm using my left hand to pull this tail, and I'm going to pull them apart just gently. I'm not doing anything crazy. With some yarns that are a little more stiff, you may have to pull a little tighter, or if you did your stitches kind of tight, you may have to pull a little tighter. But if you've done your stitches pretty loosely, you should be able to do this pretty easily. So I'm still leaving a little bit of a gap here because I still have more stitches to do, but I am tightening it most of the way. That way it's not as hard to tighten later, because a lot of times if you do all 6 of them or however many you're doing, it can be kind of hard to tighten and then you might rip the yarn. So now I'm going to work into this circle and do the last 3 single crochet stitches, even though it is a little bit of a smaller circle. You're still working into this circle and your stitches are still on top of this tail as well as the circle. So like I'm not pushing this out of the way and then doing my stitches because it wouldn't be able to tighten unless the tail is underneath it. So I'm keeping this tail aligned with the circle, and I'm doing my last 2 single crochets, and as you can tell I'm doing them fairly loose. I'm not like pulling everything tight, I'm doing them loose. So that was 6 of them, and then now we'll pull this tail all the way tight and hold on to those stitches and just carefully pull it all tight. And now as you can tell, there's no gap in the center of that, so that's why it's called a magic circle, because you're able to magically not have any gap in the center of your work. So that's why it's something that's really common for amigurumi, or again, crochet plushies. It's really popular for, because you don't want to see gaps where the stuffing will be visible through. So it's a really good option for projects like that. Now this is a magic circle complete. One optional final step that I will go ahead and show you. This is something that I like to do because I feel like it makes it more finished, but you don't necessarily have to do this. So if you're going to make something in a circle and you're going to keep working in a circle, such as like a plushie, I like to start out with this being a complete circle, and as you can see right now there's like a little gap here. It almost looks like a little lily pad or something, because, or a little Pac-Man maybe, because there's like a little V shape cut out right there. So in order to not have that and to have this be a full circle, I'm going to do a slip stitch into this first single crochet. So my first single crochet that I made in the magic circle is right here. So I'm inserting my hook under that and going under both the front loop and the back loop. And then I'm yarning over, so again, taking that working end, wrapping around the back and toward myself. And then I'm pulling this loop under everything. So under the stitch as well as this loop that is on my hook. Pulling it under everything. And then I'm going to just tighten everything up. So I'm going to pull on the working end to do that. And now you can tell this is more of a complete circle instead of like a little Pac-Man shape like I called it earlier. This is more of a complete circle, and I like to start my projects out with more of a complete circle. That way you don't run the risk of having like a little gap there or just having it look kind of awkward. I feel like it makes it more clean if you do start with a full circle, but depending on the yarn or depending on how tight your stitches are or whatever, you probably wouldn't even see any sort of gap if you just went ahead and started on the second round of what you're crocheting without doing the slip stitch. That's why this part's optional, but I do prefer the method of doing this little slip stitch, and then that slip stitch is going to count as your last single crochet of the round. So let's say I'm doing increases for all the next round and I'm doing 2 single crochets in each. I would just go around and do 2 single crochets here, 2 single crochets here, and I would do that 6 times total. And the last time I did that would be right here, which is that slip stitch. So that slip stitch is just going to count as a regular single crochet stitch if you do use this method for making a magic circle, or again a magic ring, whichever you'd like to call it. But that is my little tutorial for you guys for how to make a magic ring, or again a magic circle. It goes by both names, as well as that was just a few tips for how to use plush or bulkier yarn, or even the softer yarn that is a little more frail, and hopefully not have it break. Now sometimes you can do these techniques of doing your stitches loose and tightening the loop before you fully put all the stitches in, and sometimes it can still break on you as you're trying to tighten it. There's some yarns that are just that way, and you may have to do the circle again if that happens. But once I used those methods, I found that at least a much smaller percentage of the time the yarn is breaking on me than if I were to not use those methods. And another really quick tip before we fully end off this video is if you are using, let's say like a 6.5mm hook like I'm using right now for your whole project, and you have a hard time getting your stitches looser, you could go up to like a 7mm hook just for the stitches in the magic circle. That way you make sure they are a little looser, and then once you finish this whole process, you can switch to whatever hook size you want to use for the whole project. That way you make sure that there's no gaps in your project, especially for like amigurumi, but you still have a looser magic circle, so it's easier to tighten everything and not have the yarn snap on you. So that's also another little tip if you're not very good at doing looser stitches, because I know sometimes my tension can be really tight as well. So anyways though, that is all for you guys as far as my little tutorial today. Thank you so very much for watching, and let me know in the comments down below if this helped you out with making a magic circle. I really hope it did, because I know that was one of the most annoying things for me when I was first starting out, and I never saw a tutorial where they mentioned the tail and make sure you leave it there and don't move it out of the way, and I kept moving it out of the way, and that was my thing I was doing wrong. So I hope if there's anybody that was in that same boat, hopefully this video helped you realize that's what you were doing wrong. And yeah, in general, I have a lot of other tutorials here on my channel if you'd like to check them out. I have a bee tutorial, I have a headband tutorial, I have a bat, I have a little chili pepper, a cow, quite a few other tutorials, and in general I have more coming as well. So all of those will be linked in the description box below for you guys if you would like to check those out, and those are full tutorials, even showing you how to do the magic circle again, although this video is way more in depth, but still those are full tutorials showing you everything you need to know in order to make all of those things. with that though, I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Thank you so very much for watching, and I hope to see you here in the next one. Bye guys!